speaker. Enjoy your time. Thank you.
All right, guys. This is actually a picture of our team from my company. Actually, it's the first time seeing myself on big screen. It's kind of crazy. I remember it was pretty bright that day and my eyes couldn't open. But now you can see in real person, my eyes pretty big. All right, so before I get started, first of all, the topic for today is how to gracefully jumpstart data science initiatives at a startup. And before I get started there, I want to tell you guys a little bit about myself and the place where I work. So I'm the CTO at Camino Financial, and Camino Financial is an online lender. We specifically focus lending to the Hispanic market in the United States. We're actually an international company. We've got 2 offices, one here in downtown LA and the other one is in Mexico City. I personally have worked in a lot of Fortune 500 companies early in my career, and more recently, the last 10 years or so, I've worked in startups, big and small, raising funds and building out teams and stuff like that. All right, so let's get into the topic for today, right? So you guys know running startups is definitely not easy. But what if your startup has machine learning play or AI play in which you're trying to impress your investors with? Guess what? You're getting yourself into something that's pretty tough, okay? And this is one of those things that I talk to a lot of CTOs in LA about. It's pretty much one of the most talked about topics. And I know you guys are all data scientists here, so let's actually don't take my word for it. Let's look at some numbers. Here, look, 87% of data science projects never make it to production by eventual beat, right? And Gartner down there, 85% of data science projects do fail, right? And some of these things just really never, bring about return on investment for a lot of these businesses or startups. So what can we do about it, you may ask? So what I want to offer you is a really simple framework to think about this, right? And this framework is called the 5 golden pillars of data science. And take a note, this picture actually has 6 pillars, but really we only had 5. I couldn't find a picture which is 5 pillars. So the first one, it's goal setting. It's about goal setting. And just like any project management, if your project doesn't have a good clear goal, most likely it's going to be problematic. And let me explain to you why with the story. So a friend of mine, his name is Johnny. Johnny is a global tech executive. He's been around some of the best, most interesting Fortune 500 companies doing tech projects. So about a year ago, we met up and at lunch, and he was kind of bragging to me about his new job. He said, "Hey, Cho, you know what? I just got a new gig at this healthcare company. They've got a ton of data. The company's pretty profitable, and they have a ton of revenues. So money is of no object. They want me to, build a data science practice, all right? And I want to hire from the best, build the most modern infrastructure for this healthcare company." So I said, "Oh, cool, very nice. But what are you trying to accomplish? What is the goal that you're trying to go for in your data science initiatives, right?" And he was like, "Oh, we're still kind of figuring it out, but most importantly, I think we want to get business insights, right? Things that will help and empower our business, making us a better healthcare company." So I said, "Okay, sounds cool." So, months went by, we didn't really get to talk. Things got busy for both of us. But just a couple weeks ago, we met up and we just was catching up. So I asked him, how's your data science initiatives going at the healthcare company? it's like, oh my God, Cho, you don't understand. It's been a nightmare. I said, what? Huh? What's going on? Oh, the thing is, the upper management, they all have a poor understanding in the capabilities of data science and machine learning. But the thing is, they all want to have a hand in it. So most of my time is just trying to, spend just aligning everybody. And on top of that, everybody in the upper management wanted to have advisors or consultants. So we ended up having people telling us with different things that we should be doing, like with the data that we have and with the resources we have. So what happened here, guys, right? This is one of those classic examples where there is no clear goal setting, right? You have a bunch of executives that have resources, and they want basically to get into machine learning and data science, and it's not that simple because with data science projects, what you want to get started with is these low-hanging fruits, right? Projects that have very clear, defined scopes so that you don't get into trouble. And more often than not, just people don't get it. Like data science is not something where, oh, you just kind of put the money and things will happen. No. For data science projects, what you need to do is, set up your hypothesis, right? You try things out, and if things do work well, then you kind of move on to the next things, right? And that way you kind of, build your confidence and accumulate your experience and apply to the next set of challenges. The other thing that I recommend in my experience, especially in the startup environment, where resources are kind of constrained, you want to actually make sure that you go for something that are sort of, the common applications of data science. So for instance, all businesses, definitely need some kind of digital marketing, right? You can optimize user acquisition, right? User retention. And a lot of times without actually having to write any line of code, like take for instance Facebook, right? You can build a custom audience just by supplying your data for them to learn. So no coding needed, but extremely effective in getting that low-hanging fruit. So the second golden pillar of data science is people, right? So people is obviously important in any organization. Let me tell you a story. One winter, we brought in a data science intern. Obviously, smart guy, went to UCLA, loved to work with data, knows our mission, loves our mission, and so we decided to, bring him on board. And the first week, I remember he was very, very excited, right? I was just trying to get him on board, like give him access to his computer, trying to, explain to him what's going on in the company. But I said, oh, he wanted to start really, really soon, and I was like, all right, next week, we'll do it. So next week came around, and we had that kickoff meeting, and he was like, all right, Cho, show me the data. Where's the data? I'm ready to rock, right? And I was like, okay. I was pointed, I took out a little USB stick. I said, this is our data, right? It's right here, and it's not very clean, and you gotta clean it. And right away, his excitement kind of went out the window, and his smile froze. You know why? Because he had a very different idea, about coming to work for us. He wanted to probably, try out TensorFlow, maybe, start a bunch of, a cluster of machine learning Spark servers so that you can crunch big data sets. But on my end, I just need somebody to look at our credit data, right? So it was, and remember, this was the early days, we only had 50 members, 50 boring members at our company. So you don't need machine learning right there. You just need to look at this Excel file and tell me what's going on and bring about analysis. So the lessons learned here is your first hire needs to be able to wear many hats. He may not, just be your data scientist. He could be doing a lot of different stuff just with data. Maybe it's data engineering, maybe it's data science work, maybe it's data analysis, who knows. But somebody who is your first hire needs to be flexible and have an open mind, right? So that he can just kind of grow and work with the startup so that eventually, both the company and the business will be someplace. And what we learned is, along the way, like people that had really good, business mind, people who can do these, cause and effect analysis effectively are actually good first hires. Because a lot of times, these data science projects are not just technical challenges. A lot of times it's about, getting to some of that business insight and for why things do happen that way. And so you need somebody that has sort of that intuition. Now let's move on to the third golden pillar of data science, and that's culture. And culture is very important, just like in any companies. Let me tell you a story. So I actually worked at a startup in Beijing way before I joined Camino Financial. And it was a good experience. I mean, I got to meet a lot of people. There were a lot of very competent, just engineers in the ecosystem over there. But I remember one time we had to do this project, get this product out the door, and the product guy, he was like, all right. I remember that day we had a meeting. The product guy showed up at my door and said, hey, this is the set of requirements. We need to do this X, Y, Z. Okay, sure, no problem. I'll talk to the engineering team. We'll get it done, right? But you know what? By noon, the very same day, the same guy showed up at my door, right? And he was like, oh, no, we actually got to scratch that first set of requirements. Here's the second set. This is what we should be doing. And I looked a little annoyed because a lot of the requirements were actually conflicting with the first set, right? And I was like, okay. I was like looking at my clock, okay, we just got started, so it's all right. We'll take a step back and we'll restart it, right? And so then we were working, and then by 4 p.m., the very same guy showed up, and he was like, oh no, Cho, don't do whatever you're doing. Just forget that, and this is the new set of requirements. And by that time, I was boiling. Like, how could anybody, or how could any startup withstand this sort of, winds of change in requirements and not treat data, right, as first-class citizens? So right away, I fired him because, I don't think any company should have somebody who is making decisions without consulting with data, right? So it's very important, right, to treat data as your first-class citizens. And so in this, but the thing is, in a lot of times, right, at a startup, you have to sometimes take a step back and there may be bigger fish to fry, because a lot of times, there's ups and downs. Like for instance, Camino Financial, went through this crazy roller coaster ride, right? And we had highs and we had lows. When we had highs, everybody went out, we had dinner on company dime, and we were getting all these prizes, with the monthly raffles. But when we had lows, you saw those guys on the first slide, everybody took a pay cut, right? So in those scenarios, where does data stand, right? Data is not the CEO. They may be first-class citizen, but at times, if you have existential threat, you do need to reshift your gears and really do what's best for the company. All right, so that's the culture piece. The fourth piece, the golden pillar, is data itself. So a lot of times, especially startups, they often face this problem called data starvation. So data starvation is common because in early days, you don't got any customers. You don't really have much of a product. So how do you get data? Now let me tell you a story. There is this company, also an online lender, but their focus is more on emerging markets, all right? Countries like Africa, what have you. And the founder and the CEO of that company, before she got the money to start her company, she was actually in Kenya doing these, trying to figure out basically how to offer microcredit programs to the locals in Kenya, right? And so what you actually, the thing is, with lending, you really need to know how people are with the money, how do they treat money, how do they, if they borrow money, do they pay back? So all that stuff is data, right? And you need to capture that. So what she thought she could be doing is to teach people how to capture all that data on QuickBooks, on a computer. So she would do these night classes and set people down with the locals. And it was one of those days again, when people were just doing data entry. And when she was about done, somebody from the group, a local, basically grabbed her mobile device and said, "Hey, can we actually do this on a mobile phone next time?" And so the CEO and founder asked, "Why? What's so special, right?" And the local person said, "Oh, there's this thing in Kenya called M-Pesa, and that's the micro payment thing that everybody's on. We use that to buy our eggs, buy our breakfast, buy our cereal, and what have you. And all the transactions there. So why don't you actually build an Android app to capture all that data?" So all of a sudden, obviously, right, there was a light bulb moment. So that CEO went on and built this company, and basically she turned, something like a mobile device and the data on it to check people's credit worthiness. So that's really being, I guess, creative about where to get data. You sometimes do need to think about that. And the gentleman before me, obviously, he did a lot of work in public. So there's this thing called Open Data Initiatives. It's been around for the last several years, and basically that's civic data, made available through some API endpoints. So that's a good source if you are a startup and you need some data and you don't have any. That's something you can tap into, right? Other areas where we found useful is if you don't have the resources to actually do your data analysis or data science work right now, capture the data first. So that's kind of what we did in the beginning. We put trackers in all our apps, all our softwares, and so stuff like that, that may be actually very useful if you're trying to figure out, okay, how to get the value out of your business at an early stage. Last but not least, you could also buy data, but I will only do so if you kind of know the source, right? You don't really want to buy data from, people that you don't know, because otherwise you'll be building models, that could be unreliable. And the last golden pillar of data science is actual infrastructure. There is this misconception, data scientists, they do everything just data science, right? But that's really wrong. And let me explain to you why with the story. So one summer, right, we brought in another data science person, and this time, of course, we learned our lesson. We set our expectations and we told her what we needed, right? And basically, she was supposed to look at our marketing data and do all that user journey stuff for us. And so this person actually has a very good background. She went to a really good graduate school, has a degree in statistics. And so she started working for us that summer, and then in the beginning it was okay, but over time, I found she was struggling a little bit. I would set up meetings where we'll go over some of her work, and oftentimes she may not have much to offer or little results to show. So I decided, okay, well, let's do this one-on-one and get down to the bottom of things, right? And so what she was doing, actually, she was spending a ton of time, right? Really trying to talk to everybody, get explanation on how data got here in the first place, right? The context around the data. And the other thing she spent a lot of time on was actually moving data from point A to point B and transforming them in the right shape and form. And so all that manual work she was doing obviously took up time before she can actually do any actual analysis, right? And so I told her, look, don't worry too much, about doing some of that stuff. It looks like, I think you need a data pipeline in the first place. Let's do the data pipeline, ETL, and look, if you need access to AWS, right, Amazon Web Services, they have a bunch of really good machine learning services, right, which we can turn on right away without any problem. So, she was obviously happy, and for that week she was doing her work nicely. Then came the following week on Monday, I woke up to this barrage of emails from AWS, automated emails. And basically, it's a billing alert telling me that my entire month of AWS budget, it has been exhausted, and log in to see more information. So obviously you guys know what happened, right? Somebody obviously turned on some of these very expensive services and was crunching data, or well, maybe it wasn't doing anything actually, and it was just on. And so lessons learned, right? Some of these things could be very expensive. You need to protect your bankroll, right? Especially if you're in a startup environment. You need to be cautious about how you're spending your money, especially when it comes to machine learning. For us, I tell my team, hey, go explore open source tools, right? There's R Markdown, R Studio, Python, Pandas. I mean, that's, Anaconda. There's all a bunch of stuff that's out there, open source, and available for you to access without any having to pay, right? And so do that first. When you're sure what you're doing, then of course, okay, you can switch to these productionized pipelines, with end-to-end solutions with a vendor, and that way, it saves you time as a startup. But then, until you're sure what you're doing, then obviously, don't do that. And the other thing that people usually say is, I've heard a lot from other CTO, like the actual data science work may just be 20% of the effort. The remaining 80% is really like building that infrastructure, the ETL pipeline, getting stuff in place so that you can constantly be doing these analysis without having to do so much upfront work, just preparing. So that's kind of the 5 golden pillars. And I guess at the end, I feel that the management of data science is still pretty nascent at the moment. Data science has been around for maybe like 10 years, really, but no more than that. Maybe it was called something else, but anyways, the modern data science it's pretty recent. However, I'm really hopeful. I think, if you, use this 5 golden pillar of data science as sort of a lighthouse to guide your project and your data science initiatives, maybe you can navigate some of these troubling waters up front. So that said, that's pretty much the end of my presentation, but we have some time for Q&A. If you want a copy of the presentation, the slides already online, you can take this 2D barcode and just get to the site, or you can just go to that link. And also feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn. We're hiring across the board, so feel free. All right, Q&A.
Thank you. My one question.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My name is Alan from Genesis Capital.
Yeah, I heard you talk earlier. Very nice.
Yeah.
The panel.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think all the pillars you mentioned, by the way, I think they are very insightful, and I live them every day. But one thing I noticed, at least you are, as an executive, you believe in data. So, but what's happening if your executive doesn't have that knowledge, and then what are